Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. I'm here in Seattle. I have three special guests. Mr. Krist Novoselic, obviously from the band Nirvana, you guys know him. Thayil from Soundgarden. Mr. Jack Endino, the famed producer. All three of these guys have a new project as well that we're going to be talking about called Third Secret. Welcome, guys.
Hello. A pleasure.
I want to go back to the late 80s when you guys were getting started and talk about what the Seattle scene was like. Now, I hung out with Chris and Kim last night. You guys have known each other for a long time. And I always wondered how many of you guys from all these different bands knew each other, because people played in bands. Like, you guys started in Soundgarden in 84, is that right?
Yeah, and I met Jack in 85. And
Right. My band Skin Yard started in 85, and Kim lived about a half a mile away from me.
Okay. And then you guys met, when would that have been?
87, I think.
You guys opened for us at a...
Probably when you
met
guys
Jack first.
when you guys walked in January 1988 would be the first time I met you. I'm pretty sure.
And then I went to visit Jack, and he played me this cassette of this band that he just recorded that he was really stoked on. I was speaking very
Great
highly
bass
of.
player, like that bass player.
That bass player is amazing.
That's when you lived in that house with Patrick and Brad Matter.
Yeah.
So I sat in your bedroom listening to this cassette of this band he just recorded, Nirvana.
Yeah.
And what was your first impression?
Honestly, I remember kind of debating it with Jack. The vocals struck me and Jack's like, this is a great singer, you know. And I was like, well, I wasn't really into the songs, but this is pre-Bleach. This is really early.
A couple years before.
I mean, pretty much Jack worked with him. At the time, I was like, and he kept saying, these guys are great, and listen to the vocals. I go, yeah, the vocals are great, but you know, I'm a guitarist, and even though we had a great singer in our band, I would focus on the riffs and the songs, and no matter how often people told me that Chris was a great singer, or people told me that Kurt was a great singer, it's just like, oh, but I'm not hearing any cool riffs.
Where's the solo?
Where's
Not hearing any cool riffs.
where's the cool? And then of course,
they're not going to go anywhere.
but Jack was really stoked and was telling everyone he met this is great, this great new band. They're from Aberdeen. They're called Nirvana. And then of course, by the time they started recording with Sub Pop, it's like, wow, this is amazing. And I think I heard Bleach before it came out because I dropped by the Sub Pop offices and I thought, this is insane.
Okay, so Bleach was done in 89, and you guys did your, is that right?
It was right
89?
around Christmas of 88. It was
Okay.
literally during the holidays. I think they were in the studio with me on Christmas Eve in the afternoon.
Oh, because we were all in Aberdeen, and we had to go to like parents' houses and things.
There's something
and
for
Chad was there with us. We would like take him.
For some reason
We got to go to Kurt's mom's house.
It was like the
God bless
holidays,
her.
and we were in the studio, and then you guys had to leave at like 6 o'clock or whatever.
Okay, so how long did it take to record Bleach? Was it a couple days?
Well, it was several days of 4 or 5 hour days, like evenings. So
Well, there was Dale, and then there was Chad. There was like kind of
Dale was the one session in January 1988 that was like 10 songs in one afternoon, and a couple of those ended up remixed and put on the Bleach record later because Chad wasn't really. It was hard to improve on how Dale had played those songs really, and then
Dale from the Melvins.
Dale from the Melvins was the who played
Dale
on
Crover.
the first demo that they did with me. They borrowed Dale from the Melvins to play drums on it, and because Chris and Kurt didn't have a steady drummer at that time, and they came in and recorded with me in one afternoon. They did 10 songs, and about half of that ended up on Incesticide many years later. And then a couple months later, they got another drummer. I think it was Dave Foster, and I saw you guys play at the Community World. I caught the last 3 songs of the set. It was like March of 88 or something. And then a couple months later, they got Chad Channing. And that's when John Poneman at Sub Pop sent them in to record the Love Buzz 7-inch.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, and then things kind of went on from there. Then we started doing the album in December of 88, leaking into January. 89, and then I think it was released in summer of 89, something like that. I don't have the exact dates.
Because we had them on tour, and they warped in the van. Like in Texas, it was so hot. We had these Nirvana and they
all that white vinyl.
something like. I think it was black vinyl. Yeah.
So Soundgarden in 1989, you guys had your first major label record. Is that right?
Yes, that had been our third album, Loud and Love. And that was fall of '89.
Third album. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Was it 1990
Soundgarden
though?
huge.
It came out late '89 because
Late
that's when
89.
Hiro quit, like just prior to its release. And then
Memory's tough at this point. It's been so many
Beer garden.
Beer garden. And then we got Jason, and so a lot of the touring was into the '90s, and then late '80s, late '89, early '90s.
This is 40 years ago.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
How much do you guys really remember about these records, making these records now?
Well, I was talking to Kim.
What was her name again? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know there'd be a test. Kim.
Oh, remember? Okay, I remember just like weird things. Like when we pulled up it was Dale and Kurt and I. We had that this guy Dwight gave us a ride up in this like old Chevy truck. And there was
This
like
thing had like a chimney on it.
there was
or
a
something?
camper on the back and had a wood stove in it. It was like beat up Chevy truck.
Yeah.
It was so rustic. It was from Brooklyn, Washington.
Right. That's how they
Oh, I
showed
could.
up.
We played in Aberdeen, and we rehearsed with Dale, and then we went up and did that demo.
You did the demo, and that night you went and played Community World Theater in
remember that.
Tacoma with him.
And Kurt paid for that demo, and he had a job as a janitor,
Okay.
and he would go clean like dentist's office and in the evening, and he'd take the nitrous oxide to it. And there's some crazy stories about what happened, but he cleaned toilets to earn the money to make that record.
Wow.
Hey, I did that at one point.
Yeah, that's what it takes, and we rehearse a lot.
This is
as much
really
as we
interesting.
could, and work, and you'd have to work and then rehearse, and then
Where would you guys practice when you first
well,
started?
that was we always we would bum other bands' places, or we'd go to Aberdeen, and then we'd go to Bainbridge Island once at Chad's, and we'd always miss the ferry, and then we'd have to drive around. And
Wait,
then-
drive around to get to Aberdeen? Or
no, we would have to
get
go
to
to
Seattle,
Seattle,
yeah.
and it was and we lived in Tacoma. It was always like
Yeah, it's quite
we
an
would
hour
always
and a
just
half.
try to find places to rehearse, but we did it because we'd always find a place to play.
Okay, so Soundgarden, where would you guys rehearse?
Well, Hiro and Krist lived together in at least 3 different homes, and they would rent a home, and Hiro would design and soundproof either a basement or an attic. When we first started, that was a trippy place.
With like egg cartons, that whole trip.
Yeah,
foam.
mattresses, egg cartons.
We would
or you
dumpster
get-
dive at
shag rug
construction
on the
sites.
wall,
Shag
yeah.
rug.
Well, Hiro worked at Greg's Green Lake Cyclery, so he worked at a bicycle repair. He was a mechanic, and Chris worked at Ray's Boathouse. He was a broiler chef. And
that would be good.
I think they grabbed stuff from work, like cardboard boxes and stuff, and packing foam. And the first place we rehearsed in, Hiro and Chris lived in a house whose front was an insurance company. I think it was State Farm or Farmers Insurance in the front, and so there was a parking lot. It was gravel, and we can get, maybe
You weren't
9 or
exposing
10 cars
yourself
there.
to liability.
Yeah, so the front and the corners is insurance company that closed at 5, and then
Right.
their house was the back.
So would
And
you
there
would you have parties there? Would you have people
Yes.
come over and you'd play?
Well, Hiro lived there with another drummer that he ended up playing the band with, and then he lived there. There was 3 people: Hiro, Billy Warner, and then Chris. And then Billy moved out, and Hiro and Chris played drums. So Hiro just was being a bass player, he just kept the rhythm section going in that house. So one drummer moves out, Chris moved in, and
So would you guys be set up in one room or what?
so there's an attic.
I saw
This is weird.
Soundgarden play at Guerrilla Gardens, like in their international district, and Chris Cornell was on drums.
Yes,
I
And he
saw
had a
that too.
flock of seagulls haircut.
he did.
He had this thing going, like he had this fabulous hairdo, and then you were playing guitar, and you had this like chorus pedal on 10.
a 10 of bass amp.
Just chorus, just really like, listen to that guy's chorus, but it was cool. I liked
Because
it.
I like the feedback. So
this
the
guy-
more chorus, the more.
Then you were so pissed at the sound man, you just kept glaring at the sound man on the side of the stage, like bad monitors or whatever. Like, I'm like, whoa, this guy. I liked it. I thought they were good.
This back of the house had 3 floors. There's a main living room and kitchen. Then you'd go up a flight of stairs, and there's like Chris's bedroom, and then Hiro's bedroom, and then you go up another flight. There was an attic, and it had a window, and it was really hot. There's no people in Seattle don't really have AC,
Right.
so we always had the window open. But because it had this big lot, we didn't seem to disturb many neighbors.
Would you have a PA system in there for vocals?
Yeah, so we had a PA for vocals. Chris and Hiro had a 4-track recorder, reel-to-reel recorder. So Hiro and Chris would jam in there, and they'd have
And Chris would be playing drums.
drums.
Okay.
And Hiro playing bass, and they would have guitarists come and jam with them, and they were never really satisfied with the guitarists.
Hiro would sing, wouldn't Hiro would sing?
Hiro sang a lot because it was easier to play bass and sing, than to play drums and sing. But
Okay.
Chris had a vocal, had a great voice. He had sang in other bands, mostly cover bands. He sang in a cover band with me
And what
Hiro.
kind of covers would you guys do?
Stones, Hendrix.
Bauhaus?
No, this awful.
Because I thought these guys were in the Bauhaus.
Oh, we totally were, but
When I watched, I go, these guys are in a
This is not our
Bauhaus.
band. This is someone else's band, and Chris, it was a roommate of mine who's a guitarist, got a band together because that's what
In the flat field.
that's how he made this guy made money. He lived on a couch in an apartment with us, and his name was Matt, and he got a band together, and they did Doors and Hendrix and Stones covers, and he had a drummer who also lived with us, a guy named Dean, and then he found Chris.
You had to do Led Zeppelin covers.
Nope.
You didn't do
It
in the
was-
light. You didn't do in the light.
It was and I didn't play guitar. I played. This other guy was a guitarist, so it was bar rock. It was what you'd see in Pioneer
Did you get paid?
Square. Yes.
And how much would
That
a gig
explains
pay
it.
back then?
It was like beer, and we get beer, maybe $100 or something. And this was a lot to the leader of the band, the guitarist.
What's changed?
Because he never had enough to pay rent, so he just slept on the couch. But he met Chris through an ad in the Rocket. Chris wanted to try singing, so this guy Matt got Chris to sing, and then Hiro was playing bass because we all knew each other. And Hiro, and then Hiro didn't want to play Doors covers or Stones covers, so
Did you have an
he
organist?
quit. And, he did.
With the
Ted,
Doors?
yes,
What?
Ted from Life in General. Remember the band Life in General and X?
Did you do Light My Fire?
I never saw.
Wait, did you see them play with?
No,
with this,
not with the
any of these
keyboard
things?
player.
Okay.
No.
Mark
I never
Arm would
saw
come and hang out with us, mostly just because, say, hey, Mark, want to come see us play? Sure. And we came to the Rainbow, and some girl asked Mark to dance. It was the funniest thing. It's like, dude, Mark's punk rock,
What song
guy.
did they dance to?
Probably a Doors song, or
Did they do like a slow dance? And everyone was like, ooh.
It was just weird. It's like Mark looked at me, and he looked up at. We were on stage. There's like 7 people in the audience, and Mark looked up at me and goes, and then he started dancing with this girl.
Things could be a lot worse.
Okay, so did Nirvana ever do cover gigs?
Never.
Never, right?
No.
All original stuff.
Always originals.
And by the way, this wasn't Soundgarden. This is the Shemps. This is not our band. This is a friend of ours. Matt starts a band, covers, so he can play gigs, and then he gets his friends to back him up. So a roommate of ours played drums. He met Chris and had Chris sing. He had asked Hiro to play bass. Hiro did it for a while, quit. He goes, we got some gigs. Kim, will you play bass? I don't have a bass. Well, you can borrow Hiro. So
Have to get gear.
I learned some bar rock songs.
Okay, when did
Wait, he
Soundgarden?
mentioned the Rocket. It was like the local music magazine, and the back was like the classifieds for musicians wanted.
Yeah.
Musicians
And then if it
classified.
was a metal band, there'd be like must have Marshall Stack. Like don't
You
even
know.
if you don't have a Marshall Stack, don't
Killer
call this.
attitude, a must.
Yeah, killer attitude of
Gear,
must.
looks, attitude.
That's how Matt met Chris. Matt, the leader of the Shemps. So basically, his friends were helping him flesh out
Did it say
this thing.
must have Marshall Stack?
No, Chris wanted to sing. I don't remember
Must
what
have-
the ad was.
Did
but
you
it
have
was,
a Marshall Stack back then, or no?
I was using Hero's bass amp. I mean, Hero built a
But
cabinet.
you had a Guild guitar though.
Yes, I had a guitar.
Always had a Guild.
Okay.
Guild S100 guitar, and Hero built a cabinet. He just took like what was it like a? Do you remember that thing? He built the cabinet, wood and everything.
I bet he did a nice job.
It like one 15-inch speaker, and he would play bass through it. And then he bought himself an Ampeg amp. I didn't have money or an amp. So he's like, well, here's the speaker I built. And we just like attached a bass amp to it, turned all the bass off, turned all the treble up, put a tube screamer and a chorus pedal in there to make it sound more guitar-like.
When did you become Soundgarden, Nirvana? When did you start kind of doing your thing and playing gigs and start getting known?
Vogue, was it the Vogue was happening, and those usual clubs would have these.
Yeah, the Central, the Vogue.
Central, the Vogue.
Well, Hiro and Krist started, they lived together and they would jam together, and then they had people come by and jam, and I came by and jammed. And
there would be these shows that would happen at these usual clubs.
Frequently
Like Mudhoney,
oh,
Tag.
this is before Mudhoney, right?
Yeah, but these clubs would spring up, and then everybody would just drink way too much beer, and there'd be beer everywhere, and there'd be like slam dancing and crowd surfing. And
Somebody would rent a hall, some promoter would rent a hall.
but it wasn't punk
Put on a
rock. It
show.
wasn't punk rock music like dogmatic, like hardcore. It was like in the '80s there was a lot of American hardcore music got really diverse with like Meat Puppets,
yeah.
and there's Black
Husker Du,
Flag,
Minutemen.
all these
Butthole Surfers.
different sounds, and so we weren't really dogmatic about being like this hardcore punk or whatever. And so I think everybody in town really liked heavy, big riffs, and that just kind of resonated through the music community. And so we just
I remember
just kind of having as much fun as possible, grooving, loud kick drum, people writhing, drinking beer, spilling beer all over yourself. Just kind of, it was very physical to be at a
Did
show.
you ever play the Metropolis?
I've been to shows there. I don't know if we played there. I think it was closed. That closed early.
Yeah,
that was in Pioneer Square.
I never saw
My
it.
first punk rock show was at the Metropolis.
My first
like
was at-
1984.
I think my first was at the Bird.
Oh my
I
God.
don't remember the Bird.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
remember.
it wasn't there for long.
So Soundgarden gets a record deal. Were you one of the first
That took
bands?
a while though. Because
Yeah. Okay. So
number of years playing these.
That was a big
clubs.
deal.
that was a big deal, right? You were one of the first bands here that of the scene that got a major label record
That
deal.
may be true.
It kind of
After Queens.
Who signed you?
Queensryche,
Who was the
Rail. Queensryche.
I love them.
who was the A&R guy that signed you? Do you remember?
Well, there's a guy named Aaron Jacobus who pursued us, and things didn't work out in that relationship because he just kind of gave up. And then his understudy, Brian Huttenhauer, ended up being the guy who signed us, and Steve Rabowski was sort of the head of the, I think the A&R department there at A&M. I think, it was Aaron who was initially interested in us, but he got frustrated because we weren't receptive to the usual record label solicitation. It's like, hey, we'll give you this much money and that and this, and we're like, so we owe that money back to you. So the bigger the number you're telling us, the more we don't need that money to make a record necessarily, and we don't need to go in debt with you guys. And so he thought that was strange, and the usual conversations that an A&R guy would have with a band, money, girls, cars, it just fell right off of us. Like
This is the thing
nope.
The typical Seattle band was we didn't grow up in our music culture here in Seattle was not, the major labels were not, I don't think they had offices in Seattle. That whole the whole way of dealing with a major label, it was completely over everybody's
And it
head
was
here.
all like
Everybody
the
was very suspicious.
Sunset Strip kind of like
Yeah.
metal.
Yeah, it's just
So we
that-
weren't really into
no.
it.
That whole consciousness didn't really. It just struck everybody as kind of phony.
And there was a punk ethos too. It's like,
It's like they had the hair metal bands were like macho and strutting, but then they had soft features like soft hair and just like makeup and all
doing
these
ballads
things.
and stuff.
And
It
then
was-
the grunge guys were like had facial hair and grungy looking, but we had like a feminine sensitivity. We were more sensitive. Whoa, like we could cry.
so this A&R guy got frustrated. He's just
Okay.
like, it's like, why are these guys not receptive? Or any other band would jump at these opportunities.
I'm
and
sure
we're like,
a lot of the Seattle bands would have given him the same. Like why do you want?
Yeah.
Why do you want to sign us?
So you were suspicious of
well,
this.
we also believed in ourselves. So
Okay.
so we took our appraisal of ourselves ahead of somebody else trying to solicit us. So if a guy at a record label promoter say, we can do this for you, we can do that for you, say we can do this for ourselves. What? And I think he was just frustrated by
You were
us.
the Kings of Seattle at the time. It was like, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's when we tried telling him about Nirvana, it's like, so what else is going on? There's a lot of stuff going on in Seattle. It's like, you should hear this band, Nirvana. They're amazing. These guys would be great. And the A&R guy's like, well, we're still working with you guys and trying to figure out what's going to happen with you. It's like, you should sign Nirvana. You should talk to these guys. And their interest is like, well, they're too much. And they're like, it kind of sounds, they're kind of,
They're scary.
They're not professional. Well, let's see what you guys do. We got you. We'll see what you do. We don't need another Soundgarden. They go, why not? They're this. But to them, Nirvana and Soundgarden and the Seattle bands kind of sound a little bit similar.
When Krist would go on stage and he'd take his shirt off, that was called the full Cornell.
That's true.
It was like...
That was the thing. He did. And it wasn't like he just felt confined in some way. And he always had to take his shirt off on stage to really get into
He was
doing
fabulous.
what he did.
Okay, so you got your first major label record was Louder Than Love.
Yeah.
And Terry Date produced that?
Yes.
And did you record it here in Seattle?
Yes, we recorded it at London Bridge, and Terry lived a block away from me.
Was Terry from here too?
Yeah, I lived on First, and he lived on Second, so we'd go and walk over and shoot baskets and drink beer. That's just the weirdest thing. It's like, this guy's producing our record. I didn't know him before that. It was like, and we just, it was weird.
You could hang with him.
He was renting a one-bedroom apartment with his girlfriend, and so was I.
Okay, so let's just talk. I want to ask you guys about songwriting. I'm going to jump around a little bit.
I'm jumping around.
When Nirvana, when Kurt would come in with a song, what would it be like? He's like, hey, I have a new song. It's called Smells Like Teen Spirit. Or would it be just, hey, I have this chord riff?
It'd be it's sometimes songs would be formed, or there'd just be like a riff, or we would just riff around with things. And so we would just play like every day for hours. And then like, it Smells Like Teen Spirit was like,
Do you record the practices?
No, we did on a boombox. Yeah. We would, and just sound terrible.
Would he play you the song first though, and say, "This is the riff"?
Yeah, here's a riff, or he'd have these riffs, and he'd just kind of start playing it, and we would just say, "Oh, okay, that's a cool riff," and I'd listen, and then I'd have an idea like, "Well, this is what this song." I'd have an impression of the song, and like, well, this is what the song needs. It's not, this is not me as like a bass player, me playing bass. This is what I want to do for the song, or what the song is demanding of me or asking. It's all for the song, right? So I'd go for the song.
That's just weird. We would totally talk that way too.
Yeah, what does this song need? And so, or About a Girl, like, oh, I know what that is, because he listened to Meet the Beatles. He was in his little apartment in Olympia, and he listened to that record over and over again one night, and he just wrote that song. And I go, well, I know what that needs on bass. It's just plain as day. So I just played this little bouncy bass thing. And yeah. And or we were playing In Bloom. You were playing In Bloom earlier. And like, we were jamming on that song, and we were doing the and it sounded like a Bad Brain song. It had that kind of edgy thing.
Uh-huh.
And then I think Kurt called me on the phone. He goes, I've been working on the song, and he sang it over the phone. I'm like, oh, sounds good. I guess,
Yeah, he'd come up with the melodies first, I think, because usually
melodies.
He would improvise some lyrics until it was time to record.
There's always melodies, melody.
Ben McMillan was the same way. He wouldn't finalize the lyrics until he was standing in front of the mic in the studio and be like, well, I better finally write them down. I saw Kurt doing that, actually. He was right. He's like, oh, I better write these down now so I remember what they are.
Yeah.
You know, because once it's time to record, it's like the various, while you've been playing it, you've had various alternative verses flying around in your head, and maybe it's until you record it, it doesn't.
I would just follow along on it, or like, well, shouldn't necessarily follow what the guitar's doing. So I'd listen to the vocal melody and just kind of triangulate on, like, play off the vocal, and then you get a bigger sound that way. So that's what most my advice for bass players is, like, you don't have to follow the guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the kick drum is your boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kick drum's the guy, right? Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
But if you listen to the vocals, you can pull things out of the vocals, or you can play off the vocals, and then it just kind of comes together. Then if they didn't like it, they would shoot me dirty looks.
One of my favorite things that you do is you'll go and play the fifth and the bass on certain chords. Like in that song Dive I just played before this, in the chorus of that, that's
Oh yeah, that one note that he plays
yeah.
there. I know that one.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, the little walk down that changes. It's
Is us. Could also be a fun. Us. I'm a co-writer on this song. We were sitting down in this garage. We wrote the song.
When you hear this, can you picture being in the studio? Can you remember any of it?
I remember writing the song. I don't remember the studio.
Okay, here's the part in the chorus.
See,
Yes, that one note there is so key.
I did that in Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's playing a power chord. Like with a power chord, you have it like say on your finger on an F.
Yeah.
And then your other finger's on like on a C, right?
Yeah, it's playing the fifth and the bass there.
Yeah, I played the fifth. And so it's just like, well, let's just make it meaty.
It makes it sound so heavy for that split second.
Yeah,
it just gives it that extra. It's a hook though that when you hear it, it's like, oh, it just kind of gives you a.
You expect the
Shot.
bass line to go following
That's
up,
right.
and it actually jumps down for
That's
a
right.
moment. Yeah.
Wow, I just remembered something because I went to this meeting for the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo Buddhism.
That's a good chant at baseball.
That's a
games,
good
too.
chant. Do they do that at baseball games?
I would.
And so I went to this meeting. There were nice people and everything, but it wasn't for me, right? So then I went over to Kurt's house and I was telling him about this meeting. He's like, "Oh wow, really?" And then we started just writing a song, and it was, I don't know, maybe that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo or something kind of.
That's what made you do that.
Maybe that's what it was. You never know. It's all, there's parts of our minds we don't use, right? Or no, there's parts of my mind that I don't use apparently when I make statements
Okay,
like that.
so we're
not aware of like that. We're not aware of like we're not conscious of, right?
One of my favorite times that you do this is
lot of our songs come
on a plane.
Just an octave.
I mean,
Okay, I'm a hack magician.
now
Like I have
that
this
makes
bag
it
of tricks.
so heavy though.
Yeah.
I'm
It
a
really
hack
does.
That's my
magician. So
favorite
I have
song.
the same tricks, and I have the little bag of tricks. I do the same tricks over and over again. They work, so I just do them over and over again. Hey kids, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Hey, ooh, wow! Like this one here. Look at these cards. You know,
Okay,
like,
so this song
it's all
is
an illusion.
this is a drop D song, right? So you guys both Soundgarden, Nirvana. A lot of Seattle bands played in drop D. Isn't that true?
Sometimes.
These
Jack?
guys are the
Sometimes,
tuning kings.
The tuning kings.
Yeah,
you guys
they
played
were.
in
Alice
million
in
different
Chains.
My
songs.
band only did it on one
Alice in
song.
Chains played in drop tunings,
You
drop
know
D
who
a lot.
it's the Green River tradition didn't, and the band Green River would split into like Mudhoney and then Mother Love Bone, and then Love Bone became the Jeff and Stone went on to form Pearl Jam. I actually had that conversation with Jeff. It's like you were like Green River, Love Bone, and Mudhoney and Pearl Jam. That whole Green River tradition. You guys never did the drop D thing. And he's like, no. So many of the rest of us did. I think we might have been the guys that initiated.
Remember Bleach? We came in.
You came in, yes. You guys came in. Okay, they didn't have tuners or something, and they came in.
No,
and
we were going to make a super heavy record. I think we were listening to Celtic Frost.
But you-
right? Like, this is so heavy.
You thought you were in D, but you started out in D and ended up tuning down to C.
We're in
Wow.
C, and everything was just the strings were really loose,
Whoa.
and we did all the whole session in like a super low tuning, And then it sounded terrible except for one song.
Right.
Blue was the only song. Everything
Only
else
one
was
we kept.
recorded over. 'cause,
Everything
like,
else got re-recorded in
because
the
we want
proper
to save
tuning.
tape. It costs
Right.
money to
Yeah.
and so that was the only song.
Yeah, right.
That's why
That
it's so low
bend
and
is
probably
so
sounded with a
slinky.
C. Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to On a Plane, that's one of the few songs on Nevermind that's in drop D. Tell me about the writing of that song.
We were in this barn that we rented in Tacoma, and we would just go there every evening, and Kurt and Dave would drive up from Olympia, and I lived in Tacoma. And then we would go to this barn, and we shared it with this other band. And then we would just I don't really remember a lot of it, just kind of just jamming along.
Would he show you the guitar part though? Would he say, "Here, I have this riff. It goes
No,
like
it'd never
this"?
be like showed. You just kind of like, I'd just look and like, all right,
Just
kinda jam along.
kind of
He'd just start playing.
Yeah, and just kinda
Would he
start
have
playing.
Would he have a melody though?
Oh
Already?
yeah.
So the
Yeah,
melody would be
some-
done. He said this. I mean, would it ever be that he comes in? I'm going to ask you the same thing with you guys when you bring a song into Soundgarden. But would he come in and say, "Let me play this new idea I have," and then just play it by himself
No.
and sing it? Never.
He wouldn't say, "Let me play this idea." He would just walk up to the mic and just start banging something out. And
Okay.
he'd already been developed, right?
Yeah.
And so it'd be like, probably start singing on a plane, and I'd be like, all right, then I would play, and then I just started playing some bouncy bass to it. Like it made sense, and it just made sense.
And
And
would
if
he,
they didn't like it, like they'd get
Okay.
dirty looks.
right?
Like, what are you doing over there?
Would he ever say to you,
change.
"Hey, why don't you play this there?" Or would you say to him, "Why don't you play this there?"
What I would do is like I would arrange the song, like it'd be like, well, why are we playing this verse 10 times? So like I would come in with like a really basic arrangement, like verse, chorus, verse, bridge, outro. So that would be kind of the things that I would do, right? Or I'd have like a dive. I would like have a riff, like, oh, let's do do.
Would you guys lengthen and shorten sections? Like you say, let's do this
Yeah.
2 more.
There was a version of In Bloom that we did in Madison with Butch. And then there was a whole like bridge part of that song, and I remember Butch had the 24 track, and he put his grease pen on it, and he went and he cut it with a razor blade, and he found the other end of it, cut it with a razor blade, glued it together, and that bridge is gone in a garbage. It's in a landfill somewhere. Like
Wow.
we'll never. Just how it was. Like we don't need that bridge anymore, so let's just cut it out. That was
And you guys thought, "Okay, fine."
1990. Yeah. It was
Wow,
like, well, it made
pre-digital.
sense. It was
All
kind of got
razor-
busy. Like there was another. It got like, are we a prog rock band or no? We're not a prog rock band. We're like a pop band.
Okay, so Soundgarden writing. When somebody in Soundgarden, if you were to come in with a song idea, what would it be like? Would you be apprehensive to play it for the other guys?
Not initially. It was. There's so many different ways that we wrote. I mean, every different way you could think of.
Would there be demos of songs
Not initially.
later on?
Yeah, I mean, Chris and Hiro had a 4-track reel to reel, and Chris would, he wasn't as prolific then, but he would record a whole song, and play it for us. I think in our initial, for our first few years, or maybe was 3 or 4 songs that he wrote that were part of our set. Most of the writing was done usually with Hiro introducing a bass riff, and Hiro didn't play guitar, so he'd have this cool bass riff, and Chris is drumming. So that's their living situation, bass and drums. And I'd come in and come up with guitar parts, and usually that would involve just watching Hiro, and then I'd kind of do something arpeggiated, and we try to come up with the dynamics based around the guitar. There's the bass and drums, so I'll do this over that bass riff like 8 times, and then I'll do something else over that same bass riff, and then that would guide the vocals. And then Chris would say, "I got lyrics that would fit that." Run down to his bedroom, come back up, some lyrics he had written. He would just sit there and sketch out lyrics and and he thinks rhythmically this will fit with what's going on here, and dynamically it'll fit. So then Hiro will write a change. It's like, why don't we do this over here after we do that? So it was weird. We would kind of we'd stack things. We'd say, I'll break up this bass riff and we'll do this guitar part for this. The vocals come in and I'll step back and play another part, and then we'll all change together, something like that. And that would depend on whether I initiated a riff or if Hiro initiated a riff. And because Krist is playing drums, he couldn't just go, here's this thing. So he would come with a cassette, something he made on the reel-to-reel, and he was playing guitar and drums, and he'd sing, and he'd play that for us. We'd say, okay, cool. Now he'd have to get another guitar and sit down with us and show us what he's doing. Then he goes back behind the drums.
So how then does Matt come into the picture then, and Chris go to being guitar player, singer?
So we realized that it's very difficult for him to play drums and sing. Hiro sang, played bass, which was an easier deal, but Chris started singing more because he had lyrics. He'd say, I got lyrics that'll fit this idea. And sometimes there's a debate there, like Hiro would say, I want to write lyrics for this, it's my riff, I have these lyrical ideas that I'm thinking, okay. And then Chris, and if that wasn't the case, if Hiro just had a riff and it was developing by me adding guitar, Chris would say, I do have lyrics that'll fit that. And that's kind of how that worked. He starts singing more because he's introducing lyrics.
And you have like the archetypal front man.
And we didn't know that because he's behind us.
So you didn't even realize this.
Hiding in plain sight.
He's behind.
No idea.
Yeah, we're not thinking that. He's behind the drums.
This guy is just,
so
it's all there.
So,
Well,
that's what's weird.
And a vocalist, wow.
Because a year or two before that.
I can't even imagine this.
Well, that's
How
what's
did you
weird.
guys not realize that?
Well, we did know that because we were playing in that stupid
You
cover
weren't
band
a
and he
pot
was
smoker.
singing. So we were playing bass, and I'm looking at the back of the guy, and Chris is singing. But he was a drummer, but he wanted to try singing, so he's singing these Doors songs, and that was that cover band, right?
my God.
So now we're doing our own thing, and he's back to his main instrument, which is drumming.
Yeah.
And so that's how we see him. We're
I
writing.
would love to hear
as
Chris
a
Cornell
drummer.
sing
Singing
Doors
drummers,
song.
I know. I can't even imagine
Yeah,
that.
Dave Grohl, Frank Zappa.
Singing drummers
Phil
have a hard
Collins.
time, you know what I mean? It
Right.
takes a little, you got to work a little extra hard to get people to take you seriously if you're
There's
a
so
drummer.
many great frontmen that started off as drummers.
So I saw the show at which you introduced Scott Sundquist as the new drummer. You played part of the set with
Where was
Chris.
that at?
Is at Guerrilla Gardens. You played part of the show
We
with
brought
Chris.
Scott up.
You played part of the show with Chris on drums, and then you announced we're going to introduce our new drummer. And Scott took the drums. Chris stepped out front.
Did you step out front then without a guitar and just
Correct.
sang?
Yeah, he didn't start playing guitar in Soundgarden for a little bit.
Okay, so when he would sing, did it then occur to you then, or watching them, oh my God, this guy's an
Well, I
amazing
knew he could
frontman.
sing, and I knew he could be a front man because of that dopey cover band. But we're writing, and Chris is writing as a drummer with Hiro and
Okay.
with me. So that's the value we see there.
Yeah.
It's like the three of us playing instrumentally. It's like, and we're writing things in weird time signatures. This is in 5. These are things that the rhythm section could communicate.
He was a good drummer.
We're going to do 5/4 here, and then we go to this 3/4 section. So I'm the idiot guitarist trying to understand what these two talking about, what the cues are off the drums and bass, and I'm just kind of trying to wrap a guitar thing around it. If that meant just feeding back until I knew where to fit into the song, that's what I would do. But so that's how we see Chris's value. He is helping us put these songs together as the drummer, and we're writing things in weird time signatures that he can understand and interpret and work with Hiro on that or work with me on that.
When Matt was in the band then, when he joins the band, and Chris brings in a song that's in an odd time, would he ever sit down to the drums and say, hey, why don't you play something like this, or would Matt just play?
Chris deferred to
Always
Matt.
deferred to Matt.
Matt was just using another universe.
Would Chris go and play the
ability.
drums at rehearsal, though, for fun, if he was there before everybody?
Yeah. We eventually came to this point where it's like, it's too difficult for him to sing in 5/4 or 7/4
Right.
and play drums.
Yeah.
It was kind of amazing that he was doing it, but it was just too difficult. It just got to a point where it's like, I can't do this. Let's either get a full-time singer or a full-time drummer.
Okay, so then you get to this point.
Well, Chris didn't agree with Hiro and I.
Fast forward.
Fast forward a little bit, right? This is
And Chris did this all. Initially, he demoed it, and that's years after.
okay. This is
is interesting because it keeps you guessing where the one is.
Right.
Yeah. Just roll. I don't think a guitarist could have written that. A drummer could have. I mean, Krist is really the drummer. Right. That's what it was.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash covered the song.
Okay, this is something I always wondered about both the singers from your bands. How loud of a singer was Krist?
Oh, he had good abs. Yeah, he can belt it.
I mean, it was really loud, right?
Yeah.
So those
He
high
had to
notes
sing
that
over
he's
the
singing,
drums. So in order to hear himself, he's banging away on the drums. Boom! He had a powerful, big voice.
okay, and Kurt.
He was totally loud and just really intense. That was part of the appeal. He was just really intense and loud, and he meant every note.
It's amazing what great singers. I mean, really, of all these Seattle bands, every one of the big bands that came out of here had phenomenally great singers.
It's amazing how many we had here in the city.
I mean, really, it's
Lane, Eddie, Kurt,
Yes.
Krist,
I mean, just-
Lanigan, Andy Wood.
And he would, yeah. God bless him.
why is that, Jack? Why is that? Why were there all these great singers here?
I don't know. It's in the water or something. It's a good question. I really don't, I can't answer that. I mean,
Isn't that strange, though?
It is, because as a studio rat for many, many years, and also playing in bands for many, many years, I mean, the one thing that sets a good, a noteworthy demo apart for me when I get it is there a good singer or is it an average indie rock singer?
Right.
Because there's a lot of bands with great music, great, lyrics, good sound, but the lyrics, the singing is kind of an afterthought. It's like, well, someone in the band needs to sing. Who's it going to be? Well, I guess I'll do it. Someone volunteers, and the singing's always kind of like, well, we did it because someone has to do it, and it's always a pleasant surprise when that someone suddenly discovers
I mean,
that
this
they're
is
good at it.
astounding singing.
Yeah.
From
But most
all
of-
these different bands,
But most
all
of these
big bands.
they didn't all start out amazing right from the get-go, though.
Okay.
Kurt had a really hard time singing and playing at the same time when they
Okay.
started. The first couple Nirvana shows, he was kind of mumbly because he was writing these songs, and it took him a couple cycles of songwriting to figure out that he had to simplify his strumming in order to be able to sing more strongly. I personally went through the same thing myself, and Cornell realized that I can't be a drummer and do this. I mean, Krist, when he started, was kind of screamy. The early Soundgarden is very screamy, and his voice is very raw.
And just a little bit.
He did that kind, and it took. He suddenly sort of went, wait a minute, I can control it. So all of these singers you mentioned, they didn't just fall out of the chute as amazing singers. They had to sort of find it and develop it, and you can hear it if you listen to
What's
from
that
the very.
song on Screaming Life? Something Wheel.
Beyond the Wheel. Yeah.
Beyond the
that was insane.
Wheel.
That's
It's
on-
like that is so intense.
That's an Ultra Mega OK. That's
Yeah,
an
Ultra Mega OK, yeah,
That's an
Ultra
Ultra
Mega
Mega.
OK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's finding his inner Rob Halford in
We were
that
just
song.
remixing that a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, we did. We remixed Ultra Mega.
Well, that was the thing, is that we thought when he sings, it sounds kind of conventional, and we weren't really thinking about the fact that he was handcuffed to the drum kit, and we wanted to look for another singer, just because of his value as a drummer. We're thinking of
He was
ourselves.
that good of a drummer.
We're thinking of ourselves as songwriters. We're thinking that he got us. He got Hiro. He got me.
Yeah.
We
You
all
weren't
fit
rockers,
together.
You were artistes.
We fit together instrumentally, and it's like, let's find a singer, But Krist had other ideas, and he brought Scott in. He worked with this guy who's to this day is one of my handful of best friends, Scott Sundquist, a good, just great guy. He worked with Krist. He was a drummer. He was really into the Dead Kennedys, and so he's a punk rock guy. He was 10 years older than us, but he liked punk rock, had a cool leather jacket, and Krist said, hey, here's my friend Scott. He just brought him in like let's have him play drums because Chris wanted to sing.
He played for like a year or something like that, a year and a half in the band.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
But Scott was a groove drummer. He could play Santana and Hendrix and punk rock. So he was 4/4 and he was 3/4. Chris was 5s and 7s and the weird stuff so when we get Scott, Chris is singing, and what we thought was conventional in his vocal approach starts opening up because he isn't handcuffed to the drums. And we probably could have had some foresight, but
So a lot of the odd time stuff came from Chris.
came from our relationship, the three of us together.
Interesting.
Because a lot of the stuff that was written then was written on bass or guitar. So I'm writing the weird time signature stuff. Hiro's writing the weird time signature stuff. Chris understands it and he can play it. Scott was more 3s and 4s. So our songwriting changed. It became heavier. So the quirky, weird stuff started becoming more. We even consciously thought, this is kind of Santana-y, or this is kind of Stooges-y, or this is kind of Hendrix-y. And it became more grooves and 3s and 4s and heavy. And then when we got Matt back, when Matt joins the band, all of a sudden the weirdness starts coming back out.
Yeah.
Is that when you start doing all the weird open tunings too? With
Yeah. We were always doing drop. Drop D was one that we started from the beginning. But Ben is the one who, when he joined the band, there were a few other things we experimented with. I know Matt did some variation on D for a song he'd bring to us, and we didn't stray too far from standard or drop D. Chris was writing a lot in standard and occasionally write things in drop D, and those were guitar oriented, but the vocal oriented things were in standard. And then Ben comes along and he's like, and he was a guitarist. We asked him to play bass with us. He has all these, amazing, quirky ideas that were
Very
reminiscent of
quirky
what we
ideas.
used to be.
Right.
And so the way we were as a 3-piece, Hiro and Chris and I, all of a sudden Ben, who we've known forever.
Yep.
You asked me earlier, did we have parties in that house that Chris and Hiro lived in? Yes, and one of them was Ben's band. Was it 600 School or March of Crimes? They
March
had
of Crimes.
a couple punk rock bands would play in the living room at Chris and Hiro's living room, and one of them was Ben's band because we were good friends of Ben's older brother, and Ben came in and played his punk rock gig, and that was a blast. And then that was in 84, 85, and then he's in the band 5 or 6 years later.
Was he in a band with Chad Channing too at one
Yeah,
point?
he's
They're
good
the
friends with
Bainbridge
Chad.
Island.
He went on
Yeah.
tour with you guys.
He went on tour with us.
Yeah.
We played like Lawrence, Kansas.
And his older brother's a roommate of mine. Was a housemate for years with us.
I think he was going to take Jason's spot, but
On
then
guitar.
people like Mark Arm like, Chris, you guys need to stay a trio. Don't. Yeah.
Wow.
So Sub Pop to Geffen. Who was the guy that signed you there? How did Nirvana get signed?
It was Sub Pop wanted to have a deal with a major label, so they would just be
For distribution? Is
or
that why?
something like that. And we were thinking to ourselves, well, maybe we should just get our own deal instead of going through Sub Pop to a major label. And so we went to Soundgarden's manager, Susan Silver. Kurt and I did, and we didn't have a drummer at the time.
Okay.
And so, well, we want to go talk to some people about a major label deal. And she goes, well, when can you go to LA? I'm like, anytime. Can you go in a couple days? We're like, absolutely. And so she set up some meetings, and we met like Elliot Mintz, God bless him, and he was his attorney. And then we met some, like Alice in Chains was already signed.
Yeah.
We met their A&R guy. We met some other A&R people there. And then we just we drove nonstop, Kurt and I, in this van, and we went to we got tired somewhere in the San Joaquin
That's a
Valley.
long drive to LA from
And we
here,
slept
right?
in a parking lot,
20 hours.
20 hours.
Yeah, totally.
So we slept in this parking lot and woke up, and then we found this I think Saharan Inn on the Sunset Boulevard or something. We found a motel there, and then we went to our meetings. And
what was that like?
nobody was really impressed with us. I don't think we really had the looks or anything. Like we were just kind of shaggy or whatever. Nobody was really ever like, well,
Yeah, Seattle, whatever.
he was this weird tall guy. I don't know.
I was pushing the guys at our labels. Like, you gotta talk to
They were just like,
they're amazing.
Hey, they were nice. Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, here's Alice in Chains' new record. Oh, facelift. Oh, yeah, we know that record. They're great. And then we drove north and we go, let's go see Buzz and Dale in San Francisco. And we go, and we're
Was that when they lived next to Anton LaVey's
2 blocks
house?
away.
Yeah.
He was,
From
and it was
Anton
Lori Black's
Vander
house.
LaVey.
It was
Lori
Lori
Black.
Black's mom's house. That
It
I know
was-
Buzz lived there.
Next to Anton LaVey, the
2 blocks, about 2 blocks
of
away.
Satan.
This weird house was down the street. So we'd go there, and then we found another motel to stay in. And like Buzz is like, you know what? Scream is playing in North Beach. You guys should go see Scream. I'm like, yeah, we got nothing else to do. Let's go see this band. And we go watch this
DC.
band, and they're amazing. And there's like, God, that drummer is amazing. What's his name? Dave Grohl. And so we met him, introduced, hi Dave, how are you? And you know, whatever. Hi, it's Pete and Franz and Skeeter was their bass player. And then we say, you know, hi, you know, whatever. And then we drove up 101. We went home and just, you know, drove home. And then we got a call from Buzz that the Scream had gone to Los Angeles, and it was Pete and it was sister
Pete
Pete
Stahl.
and Franz and Stahl. Their sister was like a dancer, like stripper, I guess, you know, whatever. And they were staying in her house, and that the landlord took the door off the house because the rent was in arrears or something. So there's no front door on this house, like in the San Fernando Valley. And then Skeeter quit.
Okay.
And so Dave was just like stuck in LA. And then I talked to him on the phone. I was like, well, Buzz is like, you should call Dave. And I talked to Dave, and Dave wants to get out of there. There's nothing going on. I go, well, come to Tacoma. We got this place in Tacoma. And, you know, and so he came up, and we went to the airport.
he drove up from there.
They made drum cases he made it out of like 2x4s and plywood for the plane. It was like on a commercial flight.
Oh my God.
And then we picked him up at the Seattle airport, and the next night we started playing, and I was like, this is really good. Then the other night, we played another night, I don't know, but it all came together, and he just never left. And he moved in with Kurt in that apartment down Pear Street.
Pear Street, right?
Yeah. What a disaster that place was.
This is
You guys ever going to clean this place? You know?
Now, were those guys working jobs? They must have been, right, at the time, or no? Or did you make enough money from playing?
I think we were making enough money for playing, and like rent was like maybe $300 a month. You know, it was that kind of thing, and like
couch surfing.
they didn't have any cars, so there was like no insurance. I had 2 vans,
Okay.
and then I wasn't really. I worked at this temporary place that you'd go in this office, and they'd send you to like I would work at a sheet metal factory or painting. So I had some money. And then I found that rehearsal space in Tacoma, and then we got a car. This lady gave me this Datsun, and so I gave it to them because it had good license plates or something like that. But so they could drive it back and forth to Tacoma. And then we just would play every night. We wouldn't really. That's all we would do is we would just play and rehearse as much as possible. Oh, then we met John Silva. And then John Silva says, I want to manage you. I'm like, great. And he was working at this management company, Gold Mountain. And then John would call and like, oh, what are you guys doing? He goes, well, we're leaving for rehearsal in 5 minutes. And he'd be like, oh, good. And like hang up the phone. Like basically go to rehearsal. That's what he wanted to hear. You guys are not screwing around. You're playing a lot. And we would play. And then we had like, then we got wined and dined, and we went to New York, and we went to California, and these.
And were you playing showcases at all these places? Or were
We
they
played
just
one
fun?
showcase at was it the Roxy, one of those places, and my bass broke, and I only had one bass.
Was it a convention?
We were
Like
not. No, it was. Well, we
concrete marketing.
it was just a
CMJ?
place. No, well, we played CMJ one time. That's where we met Kim
Kim White?
from Sonic Youth.
Kim
Oh,
Gordon.
Kim
We
Gordon.
met Kim Gordon. And then she was a champion for us at Geffen. And
Oh, and Steve Fisk.
Steve
Because
Fisk.
Pell Mell was at Geffen, and he produced an
Yeah,
early work
so,
of yours.
well, we might as well do Geffen. And like Sonic Youth
Yeah.
were on Geffen, so that was cool enough
We
for
might
us.
Pell
as well
Mell
do
was.
Geffen.
And because they were all the same deals. It was like $250,000, you get 16%. And we thought we were going to get $250,000, like we were going to have like paper grocery bags with cash. We thought we were just going to have, what are we going to do with all this cash? We're going to have all this money. then it was just like, oh, you got to pay commissions, you got to pay your attorneys, you got to pay your taxes.
There's a name that is missing from the Geffen story, and you going there, and I'm oh God, his name's Ray. He's
Farrell.
Ray Farrell, who was at SST. So we were on
And
SST.
then he moved over to Geffen.
Yes. So we were on SST. Sonic Youth was on SST. Pell Mell, Steve Fisk was a keyboardist and producer. He produced an early Soundgarden record for the FOP single EP, and he produced a Nirvana record. I can't remember. Was it an EP or 10-inch?
Oh yeah, he
Fisk.
did.
Yeah, the 2 songs on the Blue EP.
Yeah.
So he
Steve did this.
produced the early Soundgarden Nirvana. He's in this band Pell Mell that ended up being on some of the
Because
he does sound
instrumental
collages
stuff.
too.
Yeah.
And so this instrumental stuff was reissued on SST. And then Ray
that's right.
Farrell leaves SST, goes to Geffen, and
Right.
brings Sonic. And because people liked him at SST, they had confidence in him. Sonic Youth went to Geffen.
How did the connection
It
with
was.
Butch happen?
That happened through Sub Pop, and we were going to make a second record with Chad out to follow up to Bleach. So we went to Madison, Wisconsin, but we only had like 6 songs at that time. So we drove all the way to Madison from Tacoma, and then we slept on the side of the road in Montana, like the same thing. Like
as one does.
Yeah, you just sleep on the side of the road and yeah, let's keep driving.
Done that
And
drive.
then we were there for a couple weeks, 10 days. And then we had a bunch of shows, a tour lined up with Tad.
Okay.
So Tad comes to town. We couldn't finish the record. And then we did the tour. We went down to Florida. We went into the East Coast.
You're talking about
We played this show with the Tragically Hip
Okay.
in downtown Madison with like maybe 10 people there.
Did you ever play OK's
That would be the place, I'm sure.
in Madison?
OK's Corral.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was OK's Corral.
Everybody played there.
Yeah.
And the Unicorn in Milwaukee and all those.
You played the
all
Unicorn in
the
Milwaukee?
same places. We'd go to New York with the Jaded people, and we'd have terrible shows there. Like we never had good shows.
And where would you play in New York?
We had great shows in New York. We had terrible shows in Colorado and San Francisco.
I would.
Would
Or
you play
we would play
CBGBs?
Maxwell's and we'd never. I never
Maxwell's
played
in Jersey.
Maxwell's,
Everyone played
right?
Maxwell's.
We played Maxwell's, and we played this show in New York, and I never played.
so
We played
so
CBs a couple times.
from these sessions in Madison, what came out of that, and then what led to making Nevermind?
we made a video for In Bloom,
Okay.
and Polly came out of that.
Okay.
For Nevermind. And that's like Chad playing the cymbals on there. So I remember that, like sitting on a.
So the actual Polly that's on Nevermind was recorded from in that session.
Yeah, wasn't it?
I think so. Don't take our word for it. It's a little.
Oh, yeah, it was Polly because Something in the Way was
Something in the
done
Way was done by Butch.
in LA in Butch, but this was done in Madison, yeah. So I remember sitting on a Fender Twin Reverb with my bass, and then Kurt's just singing the song, and Chad's there just like, and we just did it like in 1 or 2 takes. Like, oh, it sounds good. And
Yeah, you might have done some overdubbing later with Butch or something.
yeah, so that was done in Madison.
Yeah.
Yeah, Polly was, because it was so haunting, and
Okay, so Soundgarden then at this time in the once you hit the early 90s, you have Bad Motor Finger, and the band was really starting to become a big band. In Seattle, how many people would you guys draw in that time period?
The bands that we would play with, that we opened for, like locally, like Butthole Surfers or Husker Du or whatever, we became bigger than them.
Right.
But if we wanted to increase our audience, if we wanted to play somewhere in Nebraska or Oklahoma, we probably by ourselves are too small for that.
Okay.
But we were, in some ways we were too big, in other ways we were too small. But we can expand our audience by opening for a bigger band.
Okay.
So we're not changing if we're playing with Skid Row or Guns N' Roses or Danzig. We're still us.
And would those help you actually gain fans?
Well, yeah, we ended up getting into, towns, markets that we probably on our own, if we'd gone into Nebraska, we'd be playing for 100 people. If we go there opening for Skid Row, we're playing for, thousands.
or you'd maybe get added on the radio or all those kind of deals.
Yeah, we do interviews with radio and stuff. So that was, it was helping us. It was just a weird thing. It's like the bands we liked, all of a sudden we're bigger than many of them, not all of them. So it put us in a weird situation. It's like, well, we'd love to open for AC/DC or the Ramones or something. But the big hard rock bands
Yeah.
were kind of coming out of that 80s, metal thing. And we liked the guys in Guns N' Roses a lot. I mean, Duff's from Seattle. We played a lot of punk rock bands here, and they're just great to us. But the bands that we might have associated with, the more alternative things, there weren't a lot of them that were, that were bigger that we could open for. Like maybe we could tour with Metallica. Or something.
Didn't you do a tour with Voivod and Prong?
Yes, that was a
I
great
wish I'd
tour.
seen that tour.
It was Voivod and Faith No More. That was trippy.
That sounds like a great tour.
Faith No More opened the doors for Nirvana. It was Jane's Addiction
They helped us too.
and
Jane's
Faith,
Addiction,
no,
Faith
more,
No More.
because they were like this new kind of music.
New kind
that
of
was-
weird alternative
Yeah.
music that was unlike 80s metal. That
Kind
was
of
happening.
funk, alternative metal.
Right.
Exactly. So the first shows we played opening for a band outside of Seattle was Faith No More. I mean they are probably they're like big brothers to us in the way they helped us. We played in Portland with them, I think, and Central Washington University. We opened for them. That was a really important gig because at that gig, the first time I'd ever been to Ellensburg, we're opening for Faith No More. We meet
Screaming Trees.
Screaming Trees. They come to the gig to see us. We meet Steve Fisk, who lived in Ellensburg, and the producer. We met Eric Johnson. I think we were talking. Gunny was a student at Central Washington. He's now the tour manager for Metallica, but he ended up being our first tour manager. And we meet Damon Stewart, who becomes this huge DJ, at KISW or in Seattle, and he's the voice at the beginning of Searching My Good Eye Clothes. Do you hear a cow? That's Damon, who's a DJ at the time. So we met them all at this small college gig opening up for Faith No More, and those guys kind of took us under their wings and helped us. Went to Vancouver, Canada, and played with them.
KISW, the local rock station, the Rock of Seattle, they'd have a program on the Sunday night, like it was Scott Vanderpool or Damon Stewart, and they played like local music or like the new music.
And that was a really big thing to help the music scene with original bands.
Yeah,
right?
Loud and Local, and they still have that show on Sunday nights, actually.
It became the case that the Seattle bands would outdraw the national bands, playing here. So we started out, we'd open up for Husker Du or Love and Rockets or Butthole Surfers or whatever. Same with Nirvana, Skin Yard. But by the late 80s, it's like we just, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, they're just outdrawing the national acts. People in Seattle would go to see their local band play in the Moore Theater, like 1,200, 1,300 people.
Butthole Surfer shows would be such an event. With their film, they would show these crazy films.
Yes.
What Bacchanalian is the best way?
It was
Bacchanalian.
insane shows, yeah.
We got to play with them.
You'd have to go.
San
Like, that was
Francisco.
We played with them in
You'd
Vancouver,
have
BC.
to go see.
And Community World Theater in Tacoma. That was a
Amazing.
great gig.
They had that dancer.
Yeah.
In the flaming.
Nude woman with a clown face. She had some clown makeup on, and it was part of the entertainment.
Right. This was
Behind them, they had this 50s film of their like red asphalt.
that
or
is
this,
so wrong.
They're pulling dead people
it was
out of
kinda
this
trippy.
wrecks in the 50s. Like this
yeah, like Horrible Driver's Ed.
Stuff, yeah,
horror
Driver's
movies.
Ed in the
They would be
50s,
showing
this
that on the
50s
stage.
car, and there's like this is, but it's like
And then, but that's
scare
projected.
teenagers.
Yeah.
And then in front, you have the band and the nude girl dancing with clown makeup on.
Two drummers, maybe,
So
sometimes.
it was a brilliant psychedelic head fuck.
it was
Yeah.
psychedelic, yeah, and amazing music, yeah, it was really good.
It was
but you'd
pretty
have
psychedelic.
to go. You'd have
But
to.
they're easily.
I thought they were kind of America's Hawkwind at the time.
They were, yeah.
That's a good way
They're
to describe it.
huge.
Yeah.
1991. This song. Becomes the biggest song in the world.
Right here. I just love that.
I didn't really play it.
riff and the bass there. Okay, let's talk about that song right there. Let's talk about the recording of that song. You go into Sound City, right? How long was the recording of that record?
Well, we did a couple of days of pre-production.
Okay.
And so we had, it was someplace North Hollywood or
Were you staying in
Van
some apartment
Nuys.
complex?
Oakwood. We were in the Oakwood.
Everybody
there,
stayed in the
and
Oakwoods.
Oakwood was there.
Yep.
We totally trashed the place.
Okay.
And we did a couple of days with Butch, and he had some notes on some arrangements. So we were just kind of on this little sound stage, and then Butch was there, and he was taking notes. Do this, do that. All right, that makes sense. So we did some arrangements, and then we went into the studio, and it was this place. It was pretty, not very glamorous place, but it had a really nice mixing board and all this history. And a history that I learned a lot more about after watching the Sound City documentary.
Right.
Yeah, that's an amazing document.
Okay, so the making of this record, let's say this particular song, would you track the bass and drums and guitars together?
We'd play live.
You play live?
Yeah,
okay.
we would just play live. Like Dave would count us in and just kind of, that's what we did the rehearsal. We were well rehearsed because we were in Tacoma and we were playing a lot. And then, we had a couple of days pre-production, but we liked to play together. That was like our glue. We just had fun and we played together well. And, I don't know if I remember the song, but I had a couple basses, Gibson Rippers. I had two Rippers, a blonde one and a black one.
What would have been on that song?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I just alternated. It seemed like the blonde one had a deeper sound, so maybe this was the blonde one on there.
Krist, did you use a click on anything?
No, there was never like a click. There might have been on one song, and that's Dave's story. How that was like tough for him, but it was just live, and that was the whole thing. And then we just played the song, and we do a few takes. It didn't take very many takes.
Would Kurt do the vocals right after then, or would you track the rhythm tracks and he'd go in and do the vocals?
I don't remember how we would do the vocal. I think he would do the vocals, and then for this song, I remember then we'd have people who would come and visit us, like Dee and Kirk, like Dee, the drummer from L7, and her husband Kirk would come over, and some other folks would stop by and visit, and Butch would say, "Hey, you got to hear this song," and so he would blast it on the big speakers. I'm like, "Wow, that's just rocks. That has like a lot of energy." And yeah, it sounds really good, doesn't it? And we would just kind of just go through song to song. We had whatever songs were on the record, and we just played live like we always did, like in the rehearsal room.
When this song blew up, where were you guys?
That's interesting. We were on this tour in this van.
Were you in Europe or something?
You were in Europe, weren't you?
We were in the United States first, and then we would play like these clubs, and they were packed, and like the radio guy from the label would come by, "Hey, you guys got added on whatever station was," and somewhere like, "Well, that's cool." And then we were tired, and then we got on a plane and we did this tour of Europe, and we made that video for Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it got into rotation on MTV. We would get it added on all these radio stations, and so we would call home and people would say like, "Hey, you guys are like all over MTV." And we're like, "Oh, really? We're just kind of here in Germany or wherever."
Yeah, it was November '91 is when Skinyard was over there at the same time, and we ended up playing a show together. And you're over in Europe, and you're just hearing about
we were
what's
in
happening.
Vienna, right?
Yeah, and you're just kind of hearing like
They ripped off your gear, got ripped off.
in Rome.
These guys show up. Can we use your gear? And I'm like, absolutely, you can use our gear. Like, no question.
And Kurt was ready to give me a guitar, but it was a lefty.
Yeah, that's Paul's thing.
I know, so I ended
Who's
up
drumming with you guys then?
Barrett.
Oh, right on.
I had this habit for years after Nirvana. I don't do it anymore, but like I'd walk by a pawn shop and look for a left-handed guitar because like I got to find Kurt a guitar.
Right,
And then
because they had a short life.
yeah.
So
guitars,
with
didn't
no
they?
internet, you don't really know. It's hard to know what's really going on with this, and this thing is just blowing up here. Now, did you realize? I mean, you knew that Nirvana was blowing up. Did you guys talk about this? Oh my God, this song is.
It's been running through my head when we first heard this. And we always believed in Nirvana. I mean, like I said, I tried to get our A&R guys,
Thank
to
you.
pay attention. Well,
These guys were great.
loved them from the beginning. To this day, Bleach is probably still my favorite album. But we had a pre-release of Nevermind, and I think we were at Avast. We were probably demoing something at Avast, and it's like, hey, someone brought it in. I don't know if it was Stuart or Matt or Chris had gotten it from Susan or whatever. It's like, here's a new Nirvana record. We just stopped. It's like, let's check out. I think you're going to call it Nevermind. And I think the first thing we heard was Smells Like Teen Spirit. I mean, we listened to the whole thing, but I sat there, kept rewinding the cassette and listening to Smells Like Teen Spirit. I mean, everyone went back to rehearsing. I was like, I gotta hear this again. I just had to hear those two notes, the arpeggios. It was kind of something that we loved doing from the onset. Was we usually did 3-note arpeggios or 4-note, and just those two notes and the chorus, which as Chris pointed out earlier, had the chorus on 10. I just heard that. It's like, this is so hypnotic. It wasn't just visceral; it was hypnotic and visceral. They did it. It's in your heart, it's in your nuts, it's in your head. This song does it. And Ben started laughing, and I remember Ben said, "Oh my God, that's their hit." He's just laughing. That's their hit. And he's pointing at it, and then Matt started going. Matt standing over Stuart's like, "Oh yeah, that's their hit." And
It's a hit, Frank. It's a
those
hit.
guys go back to jamming, and I'm like rewinding. I'm trying to hear this again. I'm like, fuck. I wish I wrote that. That's just so cool.
Okay, so this thing becomes enormous, though. You pass Michael Jackson on the charts.
Yeah.
You go to number 1 on the charts. It's selling how many copies a week? Hundreds of thousands of copies a week.
I bought a house close by here. I mean, and I was broke before that. So there's like all these blessings. But see, it was, where do I go with this? It's like there's a lot of pain to, like Kurt had this addiction and he had a lot of pressure, and then he was like the guy too, like he had more attention than we had, that Dave and I would get. He was out there out front, he was a singer, and then he had to deal with this addiction. And so like when I think about that time, it's like it was a joyful, beautiful time, and there was a lot of pain. I can't get into that, and the way it ended was terrible. Where am I going to go with this? But that time in my life from 91 to 94, it seems like it was like 20 years because it was so compressed, and then it ended so terribly, and just and so it's like I don't know. I had to decompress for like years, and who knows, maybe issues that come from being under so much stress like that, and
Was it so? Was it as if you couldn't even enjoy it because it was so? When you become that huge of a band that
you're sitting in this apartment in Pear Street with Kurt Cobain, and you're watching TV. He's a TV addict, okay? Yeah. And he would just sit there and channel search and stop on the most absurd things. And it was just like, it was some kind of like sociology. Like, look at how crazy, like weird evangelical stuff, weird like talent shows or Dayglow things or bad music and whatever. And then like the world we came out of the punk rock world, and we were like these outcasts. They've been outcasts all their lives, right? That's the Rolling Stones, and then all of a sudden we're like in the middle of the mainstream, and it's just like, what is this? And people recognize you and see that. Like I would have dreams that I would be naked in public. Like, what happened to my clothes?
Hey,
like
someone wrote about that.
I was embarrassed, but it's the allegory or the interpretation is so easy. And so then there was that, right? And so like dealing with that, and like then Kurt was like, he was counterculture, but then he also really wanted to be really famous. Like he was like a windmill, and he would just say one thing, and then he would like change his mind on it, and then I would like even point it out and say, "Do you know what you just said?" And he'd laugh because he knew he was busted. Like, you just contradicted yourself, right? But you hear it in the lyrics too, like, he could just kind of go, and I don't know, they made the documentary on him that was good. The documentary was a good insight into like where
Which one?
where his mind, the Montage of Heck. I remember Montage of Heck, the tape he made. My brother remembers it too. We could quote from that. We listened to that so many
You
times.
mean the little samples that he's
Oh
throwing
man,
together?
he would
I
do
think
all kinds. He was this avant-garde artist, and he
He
was
would make these
great
collages,
artist.
collages of like seconds. It was crazy to listen to.
He was a great painter, great musician, a sculptor. Like I have this pipe that he made out of clay, and it's this like withering tortured spirit person. Of course, it's always weird and dark and twisted and just like wow. And then all of a sudden you're like on the cover of like all these magazines.
It's like you guys got shot out of a cannon.
We got shot out of a cannon, and like we're like
At a wall.
at a wall or something. It's like, what is this world we're in? And then he had his own thing. He had to deal with that drug addiction, and that's what tore him down. He just couldn't. It was too powerful. Just should have never happened.
Kim, then you guys have this massive record. Super unknown record that came out.
And it's melancholy. This is a melancholy.
Melancholy.
Song. You know what I mean?
A little bit psychedelic.
Definitely
A lot
psychedelic.
In my eyes, indisposed, in disguise, no one
Same weird thing.
has the face, lies the snake.
Leslie,
Yeah.
In my disgrace,
What part are you playing on here?
What's that?
What part are you playing on here?
What part?
Yes,
beneath the black sky.
What is it?
the
Are
picking
you
part of
playing
guitar.
Oh,
is that you or is that Chris?
well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I've been asked that a lot recently, and
You scream again.
I think it's really weird. I remember learning the arpeggio part. But I remember not feeling comfortable playing it because it was atypical of the way I played. And I think I remember tracking it, but I think I remember saying to Chris, "Why don't you just do this intro and I'll come in with the heavy guitar. That's me there." And I always had a resistance to it. It sounded like a bunch of fairies dancing, on something. I remember hearing that and thinking, I can't play that. That's too delicate. It's like it's the right hand on the piano. It's like boom, boom. No, it was too tinkly, and I was like, and Chris played it part on this demo, so I'm learning it, and I'm like, I love arpeggios, and all our early stuff was writing arpeggios, and these are like little arpeggio triplets, and I'm like, I can't do it like this with the Leslie and really clean sound. It was just too delicate. I'm gonna break this. I can't do this. And I to this day I can't remember. According to Adam Casper, I'm on that. I'm on the intro of the tracking. But I think Chris. I think I said, "Why don't you play this, and I'll play the distorted guitar and come in on the verses." So I can hear me on the choruses and the bridges and stuff because I changed a few things that Chris had written. I moved some of the chords around to make them sound a little bit more sunset-like.
And you play this insane solo on there.
And then the weird solo and part of and then there's the second solo, but it's not really a solo. It's me sort of accenting the vocals. So I know this for a fact, though. That slide at the beginning, that's Chris. Neither of us knew how to play slide, and I was able to mute the strings other than the ones that I'm sliding on. I can mute them with my right hand. Chris couldn't do either, so he took all the strings off except for the one string. So it's just there's the one string, and he just went ee, because that's one of the difficulties of playing slide is to making sure that you're not sounding the whole damn thing. I was able to do that with my right hand and not the left, and so I know that I remember that. I remember watching him would just take one string on the guitar and just play that.
When he wrote that song, did he come in and play the demo for you guys?
Yes, and it's almost the exact same response for that we had with "Smells Like Teen Spirit." We played that, and Matt heard it, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's a hit, and it was obvious to everyone that this thing it was obvious to me, and still there's that resistance. It's like loud guitars, distortion, craziness, and you hear that, it's like, oh yeah. Hiro came in when we were rehearsing, probably at a Vast, and the Hiro heard a demo that we were doing of that, and he started laughing. And I said echoes of Ben pointing at the cassette and saying that about Smells Like Teen Spirit. And it was Hiro saying, "That's your hit. That's your hit." The Hiro, who's also very alternative and cynical and smart guy, and now he's laughing and looking at us. That's it. That's your hit. And Ben started laughing. Goes, "Oh my God! I can't believe we're doing something this candy." But he's like, but he knew that this is great. This is a great song. But same thing, that laughing, like, we're doing this.
This is an interesting song because of all the changes that it has. In
Yeah,
it.
it's
unusual
crazy.
for,
It's really piano-like.
More than the typical indie rock song would have.
Oh my God, this
Totally.
is so sophisticated.
It's
When I did a
unbelievable.
breakdown,
The arrangement is very sophisticated.
the arrangement, but the chord progression is so sophisticated. It keeps changing
Totally.
keys. Now, this is a thing that the two bands share, and I always am preaching this about your bands, is how sophisticated your music was. Even though you have this punk rock ethos, these influences, indie rock, things like that, these songs like Lithium, for example, or Drain You, they have all these chord changes, really sophisticated melodies. The melody to Smells Like Teen Spirit is very sophisticated. The notes that Kurt goes to over the chord progressions. This song, so many of your songs have very sophisticated rhythms. They have sophisticated chord changes, all the weird tunings. But this song is just,
It's crazy.
it's all over the place, and yet it's so melodic. And that's the thing that both bands share, is these sophisticated songs. You don't even realize how complex they are unless you actually sit down and analyze
It's
them.
not gratuitous prog, though.
No.
It's all
No,
in
it's not.
service
Not at
to the
all.
song.
Yeah.
Always in service to
that
the song.
verse arpeggio part, I still can't believe it that he wrote that on guitar. It sounds like something someone would write on piano.
Right.
And that's the things that most of us we'd write on guitar, except for Hiro wrote on bass. It was always a guitar riff. Occasionally Chris would have a melody in his head, or he'd envision, much of a song, usually when driving around, humming something. I think, and I'm not sure, I don't remember our conversations about this, because there's so many different conversations we'd have about songs, and our memories change. It's like, what is it that you emphasize in your memory about writing a song or learning a song? But that doesn't sound like something that would have been initiated on guitar, like many of our riffs are. But with Chris, he'd often initiate things from a vocal melody, and then he'd figure out
What the chords were.
to go around it, which is
Yeah.
a lot tougher to do.
Yeah.
But he was able to do that because he knew where the melody was, and he'd hear that, and then he'd pick up the guitar and figure out if the guitar was changing the melody he had in his head, then he knew that wasn't working. So
Now, did he realize, what did he think about that song?
Well, he didn't comment on it. He would do writing.
I mean, when he play you a demo, would he say, hey, check out this song? Would he?
No, because he didn't want to influence, our opinions, and he wouldn't let our opinions, wouldn't let it get him down. Like, if we didn't like something, he's like, okay, because he was becoming much more prolific. So if you only had one or two songs and we're like, well, we're not really into that, we don't really feel like playing it, it might bum him out. But if he kind of learned this from Andy Wood, who was a roommate of his for a while, Andy, the singer from Mother Love Bone.
Yeah.
And Andy told him, Chris was wondering how Andy would just put out so much material. He was constantly writing and recording songs, and a lot of them were terrible, but Andy didn't care. It's like, just write them, just document them, just sketch, just demo. And he explained that to Chris. It's like, it's okay. The band isn't going to like everything, and I'm not going to like everything, but he would write it, he'd record it, and Chris picked that up from him. And it was probably one of the smartest things Chris did. He became super prolific. That's when he did. Andy passed away, and he started writing out his ass, and then Temple the Dog, and then things like Rusty Cage, and so he wouldn't let that get him down anymore. He kind of learned that from Andy. He's like, they like it, cool, they like it. If they don't like it, cool, there's other songs, it's fine. He trusted our judgment for the most part, and wouldn't let it inhibit him. He would just keep writing. It's like, if they don't want to do it, we won't do it. It's fine. It's not our thing.
Okay, so what did Kurt think about Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Oh, don't ask him. He'd be like, oh, that, I don't know. I can't talk for Kurt. I mean, he's made statements about that, or the way the record was mixed or whatever, that I don't agree with. I think the record sounds great.
Record sounds amazing.
We came in, we recorded, we were going to mix with Butch, and then Butch wanted to take a few days off to rest his ears, but then the recording went over a few days, and so he had to start mixing right away. And so we went into this mixing studio, and then the Gary Gersh, who signed us to Geffen, he really didn't think that he didn't really like the mixes. And you can hear the Butch's mixes like on the box set.
That's right.
For with the lights out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if anybody is interested. And so then Gary recommended that we try another mixer, and it was Andy Wallace.
Yep.
And so like, wow, who's Andy Wallace? Like, well, he mixed Slayer.
I was actually more asking about what he thought of it as a song and what he thought of these things as songs. Just like I asked about Chris.
Oh, Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Yeah.
You know, we were into that dynamic, just loud. You know, you come in, all right, let's just kind of come in with a bass, you know, and the drums, and just kind of build it up, and then build it up, and then, you know, throw it, boom, and the lights out. You know what I mean? It's just like, it seemed to work, and we liked that, you know. And we heard other, like Pixies would do that, and Surfer Rosa, that they'd had that kind of thing, and we always liked it. And
it was kind of Pavlovian with the live audiences in those days too. You know, when you'd hit that chorus, everybody would just, crowd would just,
the dog would salivate.
the crowds would go nuts. You know.
Well, there's a video of the first time we played that song at the OK Hotel, and it was just a madhouse.
Ben was
And
there.
they'd never heard the song before.
Yeah, and they never heard the song before, and people are just like flipping out. So there's something about
Amazing
that
dynamic.
you know.
Yep.
You got Dave just boom, got that kick drum going, and Kurt so intense, you know, and just kind of bang, bang. It just kind of all came together, you know. And I try to keep the bass steady, just boom, 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 just keep it steady. Try to be dependable, you know, kind of.
So
That's
Nirvana has this massive
Just is.
thing with this. Then there's In Utero.
Yeah.
In the meantime, or right after, Super Unknown, right, 94 or so. And Super Unknown was this gigantic record for you guys. And was it similar?
That's such a, you could dance to that song. Alive in the Super Unknown. That's such a good
That's
dance.
an amazing
That's a
song.
great
My
dance
favorite song on
It's
the
a
record.
dance song is what it is.
Yeah.
You can just boogie to that song. It's got a good beat. It's kind of like a Flipper song. Flipper has a good backbeat, right?
Always.
That's 5.
5.
Oh yeah, a way to alienate the audience almost immediately.
It's such a natural 5, though.
Yeah.
I don't think of it.
Every time we played this song, you know, played it at some festival, this, you know, thousands of people, it's so visceral, and all of a sudden the crowd would just kind of get out of sync with each other.
They can't quite bounce to it the same way.
It was almost, at some point we just kind of looked at each other and thought, this is so mean. It's like, you start
Everybody
the song,
clap along,
and
clap
it's
along.
just got that AC/DC viscerality to it, and everyone just starts jumping up, and all of a sudden this looks like a box of ping pong balls dropped on the floor, and everyone just kind of out of sync and coming to rest eventually, and they're just all this.
Did you guys ever talk about that, though? You do these songs in 5 and 7, and
Well, that's so damn catchy, but yeah, you can't dance to it. You can't pogo to it. You can't. I mean, you could. I mean,
just kind of turns around every other phrase.
And so, all the time, I mean, that song would get everyone jumping up and down, out of sync, and then they just stop. They'd kind of sit there to watch.
But that was a gigantic.
We weren't trying
record.
to be dicks. It just, you know, we just drawn that
It's
way.
the curse of the prime numbers.
So then, Down on the Upside, after this.
It's such a great record.
I love that record.
I wish I would have enjoyed. There's the whole Supernova was huge, but never. I don't think really ever really enjoyed that. We
what
enjoyed the
way?
record.
In what way?
You know, it entered at number one, which is a big deal. And I didn't care. And then we were on the cover of Rolling Stone, and I didn't care. We were on tour, and I remember a manager came out to tell us that, hey, record's coming out. Rolling Stone wants to put you on the cover. Like, okay, cool. I mean, I liked it, but there's other shit that happened. Like, I think a week after the record came out, we lost Kurt. I had a domestic, situation, a long-term relationship come apart during some of the recording, and then solidified around just after we lost Kurt, and so it was kind of weird. It's like it was a professional high and a personal weirdness, and I don't think I ever fully appreciated where we were at then, because I was preoccupied with just other negativity and bleakness and darkness. And I regret it, because it was such a successful record for us, and I love the songs, love the record. It's just that
Burden in My Hand. Wow.
Oh my God.
Why didn't that win like a Grammy for best vocal performance?
Because I know, it's just unbelievable.
I remember thinking it that year, like,
I don't think it got nominated.
I didn't get it.
Well, this is interesting. Both of you have this massive, unimaginable career high, yet there's not this enjoyment. There's all these other things around
there's
it.
enjoyment. I live comfortably. I have a great, I am not.
Yeah, I think I bought
don't
a
feel
house
bad
around
for
that.
me. I mean, I'm blessed, and I got to play with Kurt. I got to play with Dave, and see and experience so many things. And I'm happy, right? But it was a tough road. I mean, it wasn't easy. It's so weird how like life does that. I don't know.
It's
like, yeah.
I just wish I'd smiled more then. That's what I'm saying. It's like there's the consequence of that was great professionally. We'd achieved so much. There was financial benefits. I just wish at the time, I enjoy it now, but I wish I enjoyed it then.
Looking back on it, though, I asked you this yesterday. Does it seem like another lifetime ago?
Yeah, it does. The best part is like, 'cause I go out, people recognize me, like, oh my God, you're Krist, right? Like, yeah, hi, how are you? Can I take your picture? Like, okay, and like selfie time.
Where do you want to take it?
And then they're fumbling with the camera and like whatever. Like, anyway, but then they're like, and there's people who say like, that Nirvana got me through some really tough times, and they connect with it, or it changed my life, and like, yeah, that's what it's all about right there, and like so. And I guess maybe it's just something about the music that was genuine. People who were making the music were living it, and then that we were transmitting this music, and people are receiving it, and it's just they're connected to it, and it's a profound connection, and they carry that connection for their whole lives, and it's wonderful. That's a really neat thing about it, and then it's your music. It's like. Whatever it means to you, right? And so that's the value of the music. And I do that with music my whole life too. It's like I have a lot of music that I connect with, and that's a miracle that we have that as human beings. And there's just these vibrations that are just like, wow, what is it? I mean, it's just so emotional.
Now, you have a new band, Third Secret.
We have a new band, don't we? Third Secret. We're all three have something to do with Third Secret.
It's true.
So Third Secret, oh man, how did that record come together? Well, I feel like I pushed it through.
You totally did.
Kind of, yeah.
There's a story on our website on how the record came together.
He gets executive producer on this one.
I think I'm executive producer.
Absolutely.
Because I pushed it through, and like there was going to be this record, and there was going to be this other record, and then maybe a third record, 3 projects, and whatever.
They became one.
And there was the pandemic, and there was all these things going on, and like, well, I'll tell you what. We have these recordings, we recorded this, and a lot of the record was like done, just assembled, like, you know what I mean? Like it was
We just started recording. And
we started recording like Matt and I. That song, "The Yellow Dress," was just Matt and I. He was playing drums, I was playing guitar, and like, here's the song, and we did about 5 or 6 takes, and the 6th take was the one, and then Jillian did some bass, and then Bubba does the guitar, or we did "I Choose Me." That was a riff from like 20 years ago, and Kim and Bubba and I were playing Alfredo Hernandez, and we had this just
Alfredo from Caius. And
yeah, he was on drums.
yeah.
So that's where I see the inception of that part of, like Chris said, it's like 3 different projects. That was something from 20 years ago. Chris and Bubba and Alfredo and I just wrote a bunch of instrumentals. We didn't have a singer, so the arrangements were all kind of 8s and 4s because we didn't have
They were jams, and I was cleaning out, I was throwing junk out. I was going through old VHS tapes and watching them, and then I had this I would and see if there's any cool tidbits, and I caught a few things. Then I'd throw the tape away, and I would digitize whatever was good on there. Like, what's this CD here? Jams 2001.
Then he started emailing them.
And I sent him, listen to this jams.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, wow, remember these jams? And then so Jillian and I are doing I've been holed up at my place, and I'm just playing all this finger style guitar with these tunings, and just playing all the time, every day. I'm just got the finger picks on, and came up with these songs. Jillian and I were writing songs, and then I'm like, Jillian, here's this demo that Kim and I and Bubba did, and why don't you do some vocals? And that's like, "I Choose Me."
Now, background on Jillian is she was in your previous
She was in Giants in the
Trees.
That's right.
On the 2 albums.
Yeah. And so she's down there in the compound. So we have in Deep River, right?
Yeah, she lives in the same valley, actually.
We live in the same watershed, kind of where we live. So we're just all stuck together down there. We just started making music, and then we started commuting, or just record we recorded down there. We record up here. And we made this record, and it's an eclectic record, to say the least, I guess. It's a lot of diverse influences, like guitar playing John Fahey, or then you can hear Kim and Matt. There's a lot of you can hear Soundgarden. People say, "Hey, it sounds like Soundgarden." Of course it does. It's got Kim and Matt.
It got to a point where it's like, well, what is this record, or what are we? Because he was doing some with Jillian. And there's this more folky thing, just guitar and vocals.
Yeah.
And then we're revisiting the stuff that we were writing, with Bubba from 20 years ago. And then we get together to jam to just kind of see if we can remember these songs from 20 years ago. And then in doing that, it's like, well, who's going to play drums? So I was like, oh, Matt will play.
Matt happened to be, because
he'll love to play with me and Bubba, so bring him in. And then he brings demos. Then Matt's like, hey, why don't we learn this song I wrote? It's like, okay.
Oh, right, and Matt had a song too.
And then Matt's working on a solo record, but then there's some stuff there. It's like, I want to hear Bubba play this, and I want to hear Kim play this, I want to hear Chris. And then, so it's like, well, how many different projects do we got now? Is this for Matt's solo record? Then Chris and Jillian are doing this vocal and guitar thing, and then there's this electric thing with all of us playing, and it just they all kind of just merge.
And then Jillian writes words for Matt's song.
Yeah, she writes. Yeah, Matt brings a demo,
and they had the vocal phrasing,
and the vocals cut the
and
vocals
then I'm
tie
just
the whole thing together.
We're not going to hem and haw anymore. This record, let's just do this. We've got these 11 songs. Let's just make it a record and put it out. And do we have a deal? No. On a label? No. Do we have any promotion? No. Do we even set it up and mention it? It was the only reason it was a surprise is because I put it together and I just screwed it up. I
don't know.
I don't know. We just dropped it.
You did exactly what you wanted to do.
I just wanted to put this record out.
Just get the damn thing out.
Yeah.
No promotion.
This
is the most promotion we've done.
And yeah, this is the most promotion we've done. And it's because I'm spoiled because of Nirvana, I have this incredible luxury. This is what I count out as a luxury. I don't, live in a
touring,
Beverly Hills or anything.
No interviews.
I could do whatever I want to do. I'm just going to put this record out. And if you like the record, you like the record. If
no
you
management.
like the record, no management,
label.
nothing.
Okay, the thing that amazes me now after meeting you guys is that, first of all, that you guys are friends, that you've been friends for 30 some odd years, and that you play music together. And I think it's really incredible to see these friendships between people that were in different bands and that these things that span decade after decade. And here you are you know,
Well, we're having as much fun as possible. It's what we do. We like to play together. We get along. If we didn't get along, we wouldn't be in a band together. I mean, just like, I hate that guy. I don't know. Sometimes people have frictions and things. We just get along good. And we were, Bubba's there, and Matt's a drummer in Pearl Jam. We got a new demos we're
Yeah, there's
kicking around.
some more stuff in the can.
Yeah, so we're gonna just keep going and making music and.
well, I really appreciate you guys being my guests here, and this has just really been a great experience and meeting you guys. Thank you so much.
I'm glad
You might break a band, you know that? You're like, you just might break this band, that Third Secret. So thanks for your support and appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for all the great music that you've done over these last 30, 40 years or so.
Well, thank you.
We're still going.
Still going.
So you've been warned.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
A pleasure.